Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody who's here. And hello, Sneha. Thank you so much. We have been wanting to talk to Sneha on this Fireside Chat for ever since we started, really, Sneha. So we're so glad that we finally have you here. Thank you so much for coming. And I am going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about, how you have come to be the head of product at Sephora. And let's go.
Sure. Thank you, Sangeeta and Kristen, first for having me here. I'm usually not friends first with the people that I have like a chat with, but I just feel like with Sangeeta and Kristen, like even though we've met just a few times, it feels like I know you guys. So I'm much more comfortable just chatting here. I think for me personally, my journey, currently I'm like the head of product and UX at Sephora. So I lead all of the technology capabilities that we build. My career has always been in retail over the decade and in product management. Um, Personally, I grew up in Bangalore. I did my master's here in Carnegie Mellon, and I've kind of like been in Chicago and the Bay Area ever since. Both my parents are writers. So, Sangeeta, like similar to you, I think my parents had different expectations. But I do believe I have a little bit of a creative streak in me that I try to use it in the professional and personal setting. I also define and identify as an introverted overthinker. I think I think I'm self-aware right now that this is who I am and this is where how I operate and how I think. And that's been a journey, I think, over the past 3 or 4 years where I'm actively like identifying the best environment that I can come up with for myself, but also educating others on how to do the same. How I came about to be the head of product, I don't think there was like a set plan or like a formula of like, here is how. Um, More than the professional setting and like the skill set of having product management, I think it's identifying what my strengths are and the maturity of my strengths, and being able to apply it in a way that would bring value to the table is probably how I would define has helped me get here, at this time.
That's great. So as I told you a little bit before, I know you have also written a book, and that just means that you probably had so many lessons during your entire journey that it's great that you chose to share them with everyone. So I think this is a great topic for everyone over here. I know we started this series more so that there were women in our company itself where they felt like their voices were not being heard. So of course this is a great topic, but this, I think, especially with what you say, it applies to anybody, right? Man, woman, whatever gender. So can you tell us a little bit about, your experiences and the importance of your elevating your voice in the workplace? Why is it so important, and how does it matter at all the different stages of your career?
I think the simple answer to this is you have to do it because no one else will, right? So I think it's a very simple understanding that it's part of your responsibility to be able to do it. And there are two aspects that I look at it. One is we all have value to bring to the table, and we are doing a disservice to ourselves if we become our own barriers. I think we were all hired and are in certain positions and places, personally or professionally, for a reason. And that is the value that we bring. On a personal level, I think it's unfair that we become our own factor for lack of growth, right? So I think there are enough barriers in place that we have to like climb against, that you don't want to become your own barrier, and add an additional layer of complexity to it. And specifically, although this applies to all, I think historically and just the cultural upbringing specifically for me and like for women, I think we play a lot of importance on relationships, and we are hesitant to um, dwell on our achievements because there is a fear that we might alienate our colleagues or like make somebody else feel bad in the effort of elevating ourselves, which I think is again unfair, that you're putting your own success in the context of others. But also, I think just looking at how women have always been looked at as caretakers for families, and then there's an expectation that you should take on anything, be able to do it with a smile and not complain about it, and just be like, I'm grateful I got this opportunity. It's just culturally, I think, at least for me, I can't speak for everybody else, it's how you've seen your mom grow up. It's like how you've seen the women around you kind of like operate in, right? Like sometimes being a housewife is a thankless job. So I think just growing up in that environment, and now coming to like this professional setting here and like seeing how things are, how do you unlearn all of those things and not have that mindset while you're operating here? And there, I think, have been various studies that it's just not like a subjective, but it's like quantifiable to show that this is actually true. So having said all of this, I think awareness that this exists and this is becoming an impediment for people to grow, and also like identifying the differentiating between the cultural upbringing that you have had and the requirements of a workplace, I think is very important at every career stage. I wish that I had known about this much, much earlier. Like I would definitely go back in time and redo many, many things that I had done in the past. But hey, but at least I think I'm like getting there in knowing that now, and just working on myself to do better.
So on that, can I ask you if you have any examples you can think of that you would have done things differently?
Several. I think one, I can speak about it in a few different aspects, right? One, keeping myself thinking about it from my perspective as opposed to what other people expect from me, right? I think I've kind of operated in the past about like, what should I be doing that others expect out of me? I think that's kind of like limited my the value that I bring to the table. So first, removing that. Second, not questioning the norms and just going by what people expect. For example, before I used to always get feedback in meetings that, you don't always speak up in meetings. And I used to like be like, okay, guess this is a thing I have to do. So I'm going to like make myself speak up in meetings. But only after some time, I was like, why? Like, why should I speak up in meetings? Like, I do speak up when there's value to be added. I do speak up when I think it my role requires to like have a voice here. But why is speaking up in meetings an evaluation of like how well I'm doing? I think just questioning the why, I would have gone back and like done differently. And then third, as I mentioned in the beginning, not being a barrier for myself, and just letting being myself a little bit more and not becoming a barrier for myself.
Okay. So can you talk of, some strategies that considering, you were going into a meeting and you were not speaking up because you didn't see any value to be added. How, let's say in that situation, how would you let someone else know your value? I mean, you can always, and like you mentioned earlier, women kind of tend to do this. Well, I'm working hard, I'm doing all of this stuff. I'm sure people are noticing because I know how hard I'm working. But it doesn't happen. Like you said, we have to be our own cheerleader in some sense. So any kind of strategies? Okay, I don't really want to speak up in a meeting. And in your case, it was more because, you're more of an introvert. So let's say if there is someone in the same boat, what kind of strategies would they have to later make it known that, hey, this is me and this is what I do, and this is how it's useful to you?
Sure. I think first, raising awareness that speaking up in meetings is by no means a criteria for evaluating somebody, right? When I say that, I have two sides of the coin. One is it's just not how many times you speak up, how loud your voice is, or how many times you're interrupting somebody else. That's what I mean. Like, that should not be a criteria at all. And if that is expected out of somebody, just raising awareness that, again, questioning why that is important. Second, there is definitely value add in speaking and being aware that speaking up opens up discussions. It highlights the diverse thought process that you bring to the table. Identifying again that you have a role to play here and you bring value to the table. And if you do not speak up, that is basically being missed. I think having that sense of awareness as to you need to speak up not because somebody told you to do so, but because it's needed so that you can change the thought process. And sometimes it just becomes a habit, right? Like you yourself again are putting a barrier and you're like, I'm not like this. I don't speak up in meetings, so I'm not going to speak up. Sometimes, like, even people are like, hey, this may be a stupid question, but like, I have not seen majority of the times questions that start with, hey, this may be a stupid questions are actually like the most smartest questions that have been asked. But it's just a habit. Like, people tend to, you know, lay that caution earlier on by saying this may be a silly question, this may be a stupid question, but here it goes. And also that reflects the brain power that you're putting in judging what this question would reflect before you even ask it. So you are spending time thinking, if I ask this question, then others might think about this, but then who, like, that's just a lot of brain power to be spent on things that you should not be using your brain power on. Some of the tactics that I think have worked for me is one, being transparent that this is who I am, right? Like, I am not, don't expect me to like come to a large meeting, be that cheerful person and like change like the mood of the, that's just not who I am. This is how I operate. I will speak up when it's needed. Sometimes I prefer written communication as opposed to like speaking. But at the end of the day, the job is done in an excellent way. That's because I'm putting all of it. Second, I think preparing ahead and knowing why it's important for you to contribute here and asking the question, what if I don't? What if I don't speak up in this meeting? I probably have to do like 5 hours of work later on to like make up for that one question I did not ask, because there are side effects of things, of decisions being made or paths that have been taken that now you need to course correct because you could have changed that in that 1 minute. So what work are you putting on yourself that you could have avoided if you had just spoken up? So I think just changing the mindset that it's not another thing you have to do. Like, you have so many things to do. So speaking up in meetings is not another thing. but it's part of your job because of who you are and what value you bring, I think is kind of like a mindset change that has helped me personally.
This is very interesting what you bring up because, you know, in the workplace and pretty much everywhere, we have a lot of unconscious biases, right? And then for someone who is more, you know, hesitant to speak up, not because they're unsure of themselves, but because that's their personality. You know, I think it is very important for the rest of the people in the room to recognize that and not feel like, oh, this person's not speaking up. They probably are not even paying attention, or, you know, they're not interested, right? So I think and if you are taking the effort to let people know upfront, this is me, this is how I prefer, you know, working, then it makes a big difference, because otherwise you're in a room and people don't know, or on the other hand, you know, people are trying to make sure that everyone feels included, and they'll be like, Sneha, what do you think? And Sneha is like, I'm fine with whatever. I'll send you an email later, you know? So,
Yeah, I think also it's, you don't, we assume that others know about us sometimes, right? And it's like, I don't know like how Sangeeta operates, or like how Kristen is, or how Suraj is. I think it's our job to educate others on how we operate and not assume that people know it. And even if you like over communicate, there's no harm, right? So let's not assume that people know what works for us and what doesn't.
how how can individuals in general, you know, identify and articulate mainly their strengths so that it resonates with others, right? So, if you are talking about, you know, how you like to approach ideas and problems, but you're talking to someone who's, you know, completely at the opposite end of the spectrum from where you are, any kind of ways that, you know, you might be able to come to like a midpoint with them that you can think of?
I think the first thing that has worked for me is articulating the strength that resonates with me first, right? Like, am I aware of what my strengths are, and knowing that it's not black and white. I don't think it is, um, it's either a strength or like an area of opportunity, or it's not that. It's a spectrum, right? Like you have certain things you're extremely good at, certain things you're good at, certain things you do enough to get by, which is fine. Like it's not an expectation that it needs to be a black and white, that it's a strength or a weakness. At the same time, thinking about strengths not as an individual, but as a team. Because when I look at building my leadership team or like my team, it's kind of a puzzle. It's, I need certain strengths that make this team whole and strong. And I expect certain individuals to bring that to the table with the strengths that they have. So being able to articulate what you bring to the table, not just as an individual, but as an org, so that ultimately we're all adding value to the workplace that we are building, just resonates more to the individual that you're talking to. Because again, it's not just about yourself, but it's, we're all working for a company or an organization, and there's a purpose as to why we're doing certain things. So putting your strength in that lens is more meaningful than just saying, I'm good at this. Like I could be amazing. Like I have a dog, and I consider myself like an amazing dog mom. Like I like pamper my dog, but that's my strength. Okay, now if I come to my workplace and say, guys, like I'm an amazing dog mom, like I'm gonna like take like, cool. So what? Like what can we do with it? Right. But then if I say that I'm like a futuristic thinker, like I'm able to think not just like the next two steps, but I'm able to articulate what is needed in the next 5 years and start prepping for it now, because that's what we need when we are looking at a technology company, and this is what the kind of skill set that somebody needs to have. Sure, yes, now people are like, great, I think that's something we could leverage in the workplace that we have. So I think these are some of the things that have kind of, worked for me.
Okay. So uh, having said what you said, I need to ask you questions from two angles. One is the individual angle, and the other is that because you're a leader, I'm going to ask you from that angle. So starting with from the individual that you are, so it seems, just because you said, you wake up, you have this routine, you have decided to get something done. You're going for a 6 a.m. class in the morning, and you're pampering your dog. What's your dog's name, by the way?
Leo.
Leo. Oh my gosh. Okay. My god dog is also called Leo. So you're a great mom to Leo. So how can an individual, because it's hard to just come to work and switch personalities. So how can you sort of integrate that into your everyday life and, bring that same thing into your workplace when you're talking of self-advocacy?
So if I phrase it in a little bit different way of like, what have I been doing differently that I was not doing before to be effective in self-advocating for myself? I think a couple of things come to mind is, first, just not knowing how, right? Like, I knew we all have to do it, but how? It's kind of saying, as like being a product manager, like build better customer experience. Yes, I know. I mean, that's like basic, but how? That's the question.
Yeah.
So it's not having found the right people who are able to tell me how, but just saying this is what is expected. Like, you should do better, you should do this. Yes, I know this is not new information, but how am I supposed to do it? Second, I think, is thinking about myself as a product. And I think I have like spoken about it a little bit in some other places as well. When we build some product, there is a go to market strategy. You are thinking, how is this product going to be successful? What is the value that this product is bringing? What is the product market fit? Is there something that we need to do to this product to like make it successful? So if you're applying the same principles to yourself, then what could you be doing differently that you're not? For example, back when I was at Walmart, some of there was always this perception that front end customer facing products are cool, like back end products are like boring, like nobody wants to work on it. And I was in supply chain, and it wasn't considered as like a cool, sexy area. It was more like supply chain, not the front end facing. So I started doing small things that I was excited about, of how to market the product that I'm working on. So I created this newsletter in the format of a newspaper, and I named it like the name of my product. Like, the product name was called Promise. So I made it like the Promise Times, and I created headlines, and I got like quotes from people, and I'm like, this is why it's so important. And I created ads. Like, if you want to work in this team, like, here is where you have to apply. So I kind of made it in a cool little newspaper format, and people started talking about it. They're like, okay, this is cool. What is it? So these are very small things. So keeping it simple and not, again, overcomplicating it and saying that, again, self-advocacy is another thing you have to do. It's not a chore. It's not a task in your to-do list that you have to check every single day, right? It's a mindset. And also, I think, particularly for me, starting to note down things that I think I'm doing differently or adding value, as and when I'm doing it, so that it's not like at the end of the year, it feels overwhelming to now be like, okay, what are the things that I did this year? Like when you have your annual performance review or whatever it is, like to then suddenly be like in the next half an hour, just think of all the things you did in this one year. Of course, you're not going to remember like every single thing, but making it a habit to note down, here's what I did. Here's what I think I learned. Here's my area of opportunity. Here's what I could have done better. So just keeping track of it on like a ongoing basis, just for yourself, not with the intention that this is what I'm going to put, I think is just a good practice. And last and most important, I think finding someone who gives me a dose of reality check, both positively and sometimes puts me down, knowing who I am. Like there have been instances where until very recently, again, even when I personally do my performance evaluations, again, I had always this barrier of like, really, like Sneha, like are you did you actually like do all of this? Should you be putting this? Will it look like you're bragging? Like, I mean, I think it's always there, but then now I kind of run it by somebody who's not in my workplace, but is kind of like my mentor, and he's like, this is what I think it is. Like, be objective about, is this fair or not? And I think it's just having a more objective conversation from a unbiased source, but who's also your ally and who doesn't have like a hidden agenda, I think just gives you a sense of, you know what? Yeah, like you are underrating yourself. Here's what you got to do better. Here's what you did. Here's what would not have happened if you're not there. I don't believe all of us are indispensable, but there's certain definitely things that would not happen with the speed and the quality that it should have if a certain person is not there. So finding that someone who can be your ally, I think would help too.
I actually love that. There's a couple of things in there. One is, where you're saying, oh, is it going to be bragging? The other thing, and which happens to a lot of women, is the imposter syndrome. They're doing all of this and they're like, I'm not sure if I actually provided the value, or whether I am, whether I'm really bringing to the job what I'm supposed to bring. So I think all of that combines a lot when it comes down to, if you're self-evaluating, you're like, can I, am I really up to this? So I love the idea of having that ally, that third party who can give you an honest review, so you don't feel like you are overstating things. um, I have another question related to that, but I want to go to the other end of the spectrum where, as a leader, so this is as an individual, you told us, but as a leader, if there are other people in your team, who you recognize that maybe they're probably they don't have a chance, or they're not able to, or they're hesitant to elevate their voice, how would you handle that?
I think thinking about it as a mindset change for an individual and not like a moment in time where this needs to come out only at like the end of the year, but this needs to be like a constant change that they need to think about at every single interaction that they have. So asking the question of, what was your contribution in this? Hey, like, thank you for highlighting this. This would not have happened. And also, I think making it a little bit fun and adding a little bit of creativity in acknowledging small wins and not making it seem like, it needs to be a big win to like acknowledge or recognize someone. For example, like recently we were like, hey, we've been building a lot of processes and consistency in our teams, but are we slowing ourselves down with like all of these processes? If somebody breaks this process and like does something faster, should we like recognize that yes, you broke the rule, but you did something that would have helped us be a little bit more faster in achieving it. I think it's a skill set that you need to gain. So identifying what are those wins, and creative ways of acknowledging that, and at a personal level for the team, identifying what does recognition mean for them, right? For me, again, when I was like, I still am, like, as part of a team, I was not super motivated when you like call me out in a large meeting and say like, "Hey, Sneha did a great job." I'm like, yeah, thank you. But then recognizing my work by either giving me more responsibilities or um, like putting me into areas that like I didn't have expertise in was what motivated me and what I considered as, yes, you're recognizing that. So I think identifying what it means to an individual and being able to reflect that in your recognition, so that again, it's not like we gave an award in a large town hall and did the job check, but making sure that it also truly means that that person feels recognized, I think is the other side of the coin where, you got to understand what works.
Right. How this is, so I'm very outgoing, but at the same time, and I think this is probably again more of a woman thing, but how do you gracefully accept, when someone is saying, giving you some kind of recognition, calling you out, praising you? It's very common, right? Someone will say, "Hey, I like your jacket," and someone will say, "Oh yeah, I got it for TJ Maxx at $50." There is no need to say that. All you got to say is thank you, because so, and this kind of spills into professional life too, or anything anyone says something nice about you. And how do you gracefully accept the praise without, and at the same time, you don't want to appear overly self-promotional. So how do you kind of balance that? Any tips? We're looking for tips here.
To be honest, Sangeeta, I don't think I've cracked that either. Like, if you tell me today, like, hey, I like your like necklace that you're wearing, I will tell you I got this in India for like probably like 300 rupees, like on the street. Like, I will, but I think for me, um, in the list of priorities that I need to work on and what would make an impact, this is fine. Like, this is not something that I would probably like put an effort. Like, I'm awkward about like taking praises. That's okay. Like, I don't think it's something I need to work on right now. At the max, probably just compliment or like also reciprocate, with the same, if not make up stuff, but like if it means something, that's just how it is. So if you figure it out later, let me know, because I have not been able to like crack it.
We'll work on it. We'll work on it.
Yes.
All right. So, but again, as leaders, since we're here and since we have our executive leadership here too, what ways can leaders and managers support the development of of their of the team, the voices within the organization, and are there any kind of structures or processes that they can create to better do this?
I think being able to think about it as a personal level and not at an organizational level is a different way to approach this, right? Because as I mentioned earlier, um, reinforcing employees' contributions and acknowledging and recognizing it is catered to how the individual thinks about it. It's not how I think it should be, and then making sure everybody else aligns to it. It's what does the individual think about it and how I align to making that happen. But of course, you can't do like 50 different things 50 different ways. So finding different strategies that would cater to majority of and not having like a one solution fits all, but identifying what would resonate more. And for the things that you can't do at an organizational level, do it at a personal level, so that you're still filling in the gap, I think is will definitely go a long way. The second thing I think is adding an element of fun, I think is very important, so that it doesn't, like I've mentioned this repeatedly, so that it doesn't become like another task or like another chore to do, so that it feels more bringing the people together and like having fun, like just being more personal about things. And I know you mentioned earlier sometime that, how do you like from being at home to like going to work, like how do you switch and you make sure that you have like a different work version of yourself? Like we are the same version, right? Like I don't have like a personal version, I don't have like a work version. It's me. You get me in my full, like you get my quirks, you get like my frustrations, you get all of me. So being able to build an environment where people can be who they are, irrespective of what's going on in their personal and professional life, not being like a barrier to being their authentic self, I think would go a long way.
That's great. So just one quick thing. During the pandemic, did you go back to the Walmart naysayers and say, now what do you think of supply chain?
No, I didn't.
That
I
would have
think
been like,
that
yeah, how glamorous is it now?
supply chain in Walmart is pretty glamorous, by the way. I mean, supply chain in general is pretty
It
glamorous.
is, yeah. But like you said, most people like it really grew to it became a household word during the pandemic, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Suddenly everybody knew what it was.
Yes.
All right. So we do have some questions here. Let me see if I can read them out to you. Hassan is asking, as you mentioned, often there may be some level of self-limitation, especially with women leaders, but there are also structural and organizational issues. Some companies, it worked for some and initiated some women in technology empowerment. They have explicit women in technology empowerment program. Oh, he wanted to know if Sephora has one, and if so, how can we support it? If not, would you see a value in such a program, and how could we support it? Actually, let me answer some of this for Hassan, because considering I work with Sephora, so Hassan, one of the reasons I love working with Sephora is I go in there on the technology floors, and I see so many women in there. I have been there at a time when they have had their monthly women in what was it called? Women in leadership
Women who
or
tech.
women in
Women who
technology?
tech. Yeah, women
Women
who
in
tech.
women who tech meetings. And I have heard the women talk over there, and it has been inspiring to me to actually come back and use some of the same, tips and tricks and everything that they spoke about in Intelliswift themselves. So, and Hassan, the other thing is that they take it very, very seriously. For example, we as a minority vendor have always been welcomed at Sephora. So, but if there's anything else that we can do, Sneha, to support you guys, please let me know.
Yeah, I mean, there's always so many things we could be doing. So, I mean, that's a whole session in itself that we could have.
It is. It truly is. It's true. And I have to tell you, because one of the things that I do for Intelliswift is also I head our DEI strategy. And when I go to any, like I went to the WeBank conference recently, and there was this lady who was an immigrant, and she was selling some products, and she was really trying to get the word out there. And I was like, you know who you really want to go talk to? You want to go and try and talk to Sephora, because I know they're always very encouraging for this. And she said, really? I didn't know. I was trying to get into grocery stores. And I'm like, go talk to Sephora, you know? So that's always a great thing to know. So, and then Shilpa has, Sneha, Shilpa here, as we grow higher in the leadership ladder, the expectations and work keep growing. How do you strike a balance between profession and personal? Oh, I love this question.
Um, a mentor actually taught me this a few years ago, where there are four pillars in your life, right? Like one is work, 25%. One is your personal goal, 25%, health, 25%, and family and friends, 25%. So if you're looking at your overall time and how you invest in each of these pillars, then you naturally tend to look at work as 25% of everything you want to do. And I think what resonated me most was there is work goals and professional goals. There is a personal goal, which may not be just growing up the ladder or like your professional aspirations. For me, as I mentioned, like both my parents are writers. Like I have a personal goal that I need to write more and like share more about what I do. So the other benefit that I have had in thinking about this is then you're not thinking of success and failure just in one aspect, which kind of motivates you and demotivates you so much because you have success and wins in other pillars of your life. So if something doesn't go as expected in work, it's just 25%. That's okay. I have the other 75% that I could like fall back on and like look at my wins for that day in the other aspects of my life. Before, if something didn't go, like that was it. I'm like, oh my God, this day sucked. Like I can't believe it. Like, oh, why? Why me? Um, so I think that's changed a lot, that it's just thinking about it more objectively as here is what's important to me overall. And that could vary based on, each individual. I'm not saying these are the actual, but it's just a way of thinking.
But just to tag onto it, sometimes, especially the region we are in the line of work we are in, the days tend to be very, very long, and people around you are also working these long days. How do you, let's say, elevate your voice to let people know that this this is not necessarily a good norm to have, as a leader, for example, how do you create those boundaries?
I think for me, if there is a question of how much time I need to invest and is this burning me out, thinking and it's conflicting with like my personal things that I need to do, thinking about it that in the next 5 years, will I look back and regret this decision that I have made? Right? Like I have people who's, in my team who have like some personal struggles that they're going through with family and all of that. And they still try to be there at work because, work is important. But not looking at that moment, but thinking about that moment a year later and saying that if I were in that moment now, would I do things differently? Just gives you a different perspective because you're so stuck up in that one moment and you're trying to make optimize for that one instance that you lose sight of the bigger picture. And second, at the end of the day, depending on which profession you are, it's not life and death, right? We're still, you know, still, like I say, like a personal tagline of mine, which I don't know if I should be saying in a public forum, but like we are just still selling lipsticks. Yeah, we're just still, just having that perspective that what is important as an individual and not like as a professional in the company that you work with is just a bigger picture that you need to look at.
I actually love that. See, I hadn't thought of this looking back 5 years later. I have a policy of not wanting to regret anything. So that I think it's great. So I love that. I know we are at time, so I don't want to keep you anymore. But any final piece of advice that you might have for folks who are here? And let me just tell you, we have people of all genders. We have people from various places. We have people from the US. We have people from Canada. We have people from India actually attending. And we have them at all levels, people who are starting off in their careers. You saw Suraj, he's here, he's our CEO. So any kind of advice that you would have for anyone listening in today?
The only thing I would say is spend time knowing yourself more, knowing what works for you and what doesn't, and being very deliberate about the controllables and the uncontrollables, and figuring out how you're able to change the controllables in a way that is optimized for your best performance. Right? I think that is that goes a long way, and it's again a mindset that people need to like start thinking about. That hey, I work best in this environment. This is who I am. So just knowing that and spending some time thinking about it. It's not like you can wake up one morning and suddenly you're like, yes, I got it. It's like every day things about yourself. And when projects don't go well, we always have a retrospective and we're like, what could we have done better? But if you're not feeling good about certain things at the end of the day, just doing a quick retro on like, why am I feeling this way? Like, what didn't go according to like my plan, and how can I avoid that? Instead of saying, I'm going to do better, because again, there's controllables and there's uncontrollables. So just knowing that, I think, at least has helped me. I don't know if it's going to help everybody.
I love that. I have an entire page that I have written down of points that I have gathered from this conversation today that I'm going to do a little self-introspection about. So thank you. This was very, very useful. I am sure it was useful to all the levels of the people that were here. I am going to definitely use this in my daily life going forward. Maybe even wake up at 5 a.m. Who knows?
You'll see.
We'll see. Yes. But you definitely gave me the impetus to do so. Thank you so much, Sneha. We really appreciate your being here. And we hope to maybe do a follow-up someday on other topics. So thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day and keep being you. You're wonderful.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you for this opportunity. If I'm on LinkedIn, so if people have any follow-ups or questions that they need to ask, and it's just not like I feel sometimes like I'm coming here and like sharing a lot of like gyan, if people, Indian people would know. But I've learned so much from you as well, Sangeeta, even from Kristen. So it's like mutual, I think. So again, thank you for, having me here.
Thanks. I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much.